Girl said, "Hi sir, my dad had a tattoo just like yours." 4 bikers froze when they heard his name. The engine noises stopped all at once. 4 bikers stood frozen in the doorway, not because of fear, not because of danger, but because a little girl had just said a name they hadn't heard in 10 years and thought they never would again. Sometimes the past doesn't knock. It walks in quietly, on shaking legs, with a soft voice and a truth too heavy for a child to carry alone. This is a story about loyalty, lost, and the promises men think time erased. The clubhouse smelled like oil, old leather, and burnt coffee. Engines had just gone quiet outside, the metal ticking as it cooled. 4 bikers stood near the bar, laughing low when the door opened. She couldn't have been more than 10, small frame, oversized hoodie, a backpack that looked heavier than it should have been. She stood there, fingers curled tight around the strap, eyes scanning the room like she wasn't sure she belonged in it, but had nowhere else to go. One of the men noticed first. He nudged the others. The room went still. "Hi, sir," she said. Her voice was soft, not scared, just careful. "I think my dad had a tattoo just like yours." She pointed, a faded ink on the biker's forearm, an old symbol worn by time and years of road. The man didn't smile, didn't joke. Instead, he slowly crouched down, meeting her eyes. "What's your dad's name?" he asked. She swallowed. "Thomas Reed." The air changed. Not a sound, not a breath. 4 grown men stood frozen like statues carved from memory. One of them stepped back without realizing it. Another lowered his eyes. Thomas Reed wasn't just a name. He was history. He was loyalty. He was a man who left without turning his back. The leader, gray beard, tired eyes, finally spoke. "Who are you, kid?" "My name's Lily," she said. "I'm his daughter." Her hands were shaking now. She tried to hide them by pressing them against her jeans. The man looked at her the way you look at someone carrying something too heavy for their age. "Where's your father, Lily?" She didn't cry. "He's at home," she said. Then quieter, "He's really sick." That was the moment they knew. This wasn't a visit. This wasn't curiosity. This was a child, sent on a road. No child should ever have to travel alone. They brought her inside. The clubhouse wasn't dangerous, just loud in its silence. Old couches, a pool table with chipped corners, walls covered in photos of men who had laughed, ridden, bled, and buried each other. Lily looked at every picture, not with curiosity, with hope, like she was searching for proof that her dad had once been real here. The leader pulled out a chair for her. "Tell me," he said gently, "what kind of sick?" She took a breath she'd clearly practiced. "Cancer," she said, "stage 3. One of the men turned away. Another clenched his jaw. "How much?" someone asked quietly. "They said around $85,000, Lily replied. The number hung there, heavy, unmovable. "My dad didn't want me to come," she added quickly. "But he said, if there was one place that still remembered who he was, it would be here." The leader closed his eyes. 10 years vanished in a second. Thomas, standing in the rain after a long ride. Thomas, fixing engines that weren't his problem. Thomas, saying goodbye without asking for anything. "Does he know you're here?" the leader asked. She nodded. "He said he was sorry." That did it. One of the bikers swore under his breath. Another wiped his face hard with his palm. "And your mom?" the leader asked. Lily looked down. "She left 2 years ago." Silence again. The leader stood slowly, walked to the bar, poured a drink he didn't touch. "Your father left to protect you," he said finally. "He didn't run." Lily looked up, eyes wet but steady. "I know," she whispered. "That's why I came." The men exchanged looks, not of doubt, but of course. Helping Thomas Reed wouldn't be easy. It would hurt. It would take sacrifice. But loyalty doesn't ask if it's convenient. It only asks if you still remember who you were. After Lily left the clubhouse that night, the men stayed behind. No engines, no laughter, just the low hum of the old refrigerator and the weight of memory. The leader, Walter Hayes, sat alone at the bar. He didn't drink. He just stared into the glass like it might show him the past. Thomas Reed. Some men disappear from your life. Others stay with you even when they're gone. Thomas had joined the club young, 23, quiet, no big talk, no need to prove himself. Most guys came in loud, hungry for respect. Thomas never asked for it. He earned it the slow way, by showing up. He showed up when someone's bike broke down in the rain. He showed up when a member's kid was in the hospital. He showed up when things got ugly and nobody else wanted to step in. Walter remembered the night everything changed. A bar fight, Wrong place, wrong words. One of their guys, Danny, got cornered outside, 4 men on one. By the time the club arrived, Danny was bleeding and barely standing. Before Walter could react, Thomas was already moving, straight toward the biggest guy. No hesitation, no fear. Thomas took hit after hit, kept standing, kept swinging until Danny was safe. Later, sitting in the ER, blood on his shirt, stitches across his forehead, Walter asked him why. Thomas looked confused. "He's one of us," he said. "That's enough." That was Thomas Reed. Not perfect, not reckless, just loyal in a way that didn't ask questions. Over the years, Thomas became the backbone of the chapter. He organized rides, settled arguments, helped guys find work, tutored kids on weekends. He didn't care about titles or patches. If Thomas said he'd handle something, it got handled. Then there was Sarah, a waitress at a diner off the highway. Soft-spoken, warm smile. Thomas went there every morning for 3 months before he worked up the nerve to ask her out. When he finally did, she said yes before he finished speaking. They married quietly. No drama, no show. Walter stood beside him as best man. "I never thought I'd have this," Thomas whispered that night. Walter told him the truth. "You earned it." And for a while, Thomas believed it. 2 years after the wedding, Sarah got pregnant. Thomas was terrified. Not the loud kind of fear, the quiet one. The kind that keeps you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you're about to fail someone who hasn't even been born yet. He grew up without a father. No guide, no example. He didn't want that for his child. At first, he told himself everything would be fine. The club wasn't violent. They weren't criminals. But life on the road came with risks, accidents, rival clubs, late nights, long rides. Time was the real danger. Thomas started missing meetings, skipping rides, coming home earlier. Walter noticed. One night, Thomas asked to talk, just the two of them. They sat outside the clubhouse, engines off, crickets loud in the dark. "I'm leaving," Thomas said. Walter didn't interrupt. "I love this life," Thomas continued, "but I can't love it more than my kid. If something happens to me, I don't want her growing up wondering why I chose the road over her." But Walter listened. When Thomas finished, Walter nodded. "The door stays open," he said, "always." Thomas didn't cry. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just thanked him. 3 months later, Lily was born. Thomas never came back to the club. Not once. He took quiet jobs, construction, delivery work, anything steady. He kept his head down, stayed invisible. He raised Lily with patience, packed her lunches, helped with homework, read her stories every night, even when he was exhausted. Sarah struggled. The fear never really left her. 2 years before Lily walked into the clubhouse, Sarah left, said she couldn't handle watching Thomas get weaker, couldn't live under the shadow of what if. Thomas didn't fight her, he just focused on Lily. Then came the diagnosis, lung cancer, stage 3. Thomas didn't call the club, didn't ask for help. He sold his car, sold their furniture, took loans he couldn't repay. Only when the doctor said *3 months did Thomas finally break. He looked at Lily and said the hardest words of his life. "There's one place that still remembers who I was," he told her, "and they'll listen to you." Next morning, the clubhouse filled again. 4 men sat around the old wooden table, coffee untouched, faces heavy. Walter stood at the head. "We're talking about $85,000, he said. "Not pocket change." Nobody argued. Cole, the youngest, leaned forward. "I've got 2 kids, a mortgage." Fry, the oldest, rubbed his hands together. "I'm barely covering my medical bills." A scarred biker named Mason stared at the floor. "I owe money already." Walter nodded. "I know, this isn't easy." They all knew what Thomas would have done. That made it worse. "Helping him means sacrifice," Walter continued. "Real sacrifice, selling bikes, taking extra work, emptying savings." Silence, then Mason spoke. "He saved my life," he said quietly. "I'd be dead if not for him." Cole exhaled hard. "He taught my boy math when I was working nights." I swallowed. "He sat with me when my wife died. Didn't say a word, just stayed." One by one, the reasons came out. Not dramatic, not loud, just truth. Walter looked around the table. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is loyalty. And loyalty costs something." He stood. "I'm selling my bike." The words landed hard. Cole shook his head. "That's your bike, Walt. You've had it 20 years. Walter met his eyes. "Then it's done its job." Mason nodded slowly. "I'll sell mine too." Fry sighed. "I'll pick up double shifts." Cole hesitated, looked at his hands, then up. I'll figure something out. Nobody cheered, nobody smiled. They weren't heroes. They were just men keeping a promise. That afternoon, Walter called Lily. "Tell your dad," he said, voice steady. "He's not alone." On the other end of the line, Lily cried, not loud, not dramatic, just the sound of a child finally allowed to be weak. Walter closed his eyes. Some bonds don't fade. They just wait for the moment they're needed again. The ride to Thomas Reed's house was quiet. No engines roaring for show. No jokes through helmets. Just 4 bikes cutting through the morning air like a promise finally being kept. Lily waited on the porch. She stood straight, backpack at her feet, like she'd been holding that position for hours. When she saw the bike slow, her breath caught. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just watched. Walter took off his helmet first. The others followed. They looked older here, away from the clubhouse. Less legend, more human. "Is he inside?" Walter asked. Lily nodded. "He's awake today." Inside, the house was small. Clean, too quiet. Thomas lay on the couch, thinner than anyone remembered. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. But when he saw the men, his eyes filled not with fear but disbelief. "You idiots," he whispered, smiling. "I told her not to." Walter stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't get to decide who remembers you," he said. Thomas tried to sit up, failed. Mason gently helped him. "I never wanted to drag you back into this," Thomas said. "I left so you wouldn't have to." "You left for the right reason," Rye said. "That doesn't erase who you are." Lily stood near the doorway, watching her father shrink under the weight of the moment. Walter knelt beside Thomas. "We're handling the money," he said. "Treatment starts next week." Thomas closed his eyes. For a moment, everyone thought he'd passed out. Then his chest shook. He was crying silent, broken sobs he'd held back for years. "I didn't want her to remember me as a burden," he said. "I wanted to be enough." Walter squeezed his shoulder. "You were," he said. "You still are." Lily stepped forward then, wrapped her arms around her father carefully. Outside, the bikes sat in the driveway, waiting like they always had. The weeks that followed were brutal. Bikes were sold, savings emptied, sleep sacrificed. Walter took night shifts at a warehouse. Rye picked up construction jobs his doctor told him to avoid. Mason sold the bike his brother had died on, the one thing he swore he never would. Cole started skipping lunches. Nobody complained. At the hospital, Thomas began treatment. Lily sat beside him every day, homework spread across the small table, pretending everything was normal. When the medicine made him sick, she held his hand. When he slept, she watched his chest rise and fall like it was the most important job in the world. The bikers rotated visits, not all at once, never overwhelming, just quiet presence. One afternoon, a nurse pulled Walter aside. "Your family?" she asked. Walter paused, then nodded. "Yes." The first setback came fast. An infection, another bill, another impossible number. For a moment, doubt crept in. Cole stared at his empty fridge one night, hands shaking. Mason sat alone in his garage, staring at the empty space where his bike used to be. Was it enough? Then Lily did something none of them expected. She started a small jar on the kitchen counter, wrote on it in marker, "For Dad." She put her allowance in first. When Walter saw it, he turned away before anyone noticed his eyes. The jar didn't raise much money, but it reminded them why they started. Thomas didn't know about most of the sacrifices. When he apologized, they shut him down. "You already paid," Rye told him. "You paid years ago." Slowly, the treatment began to work. Not miracles, just inches. Thomas gained a little strength. His color improved. He laughed once, a real laugh, at something Lily said. The doctor used a word none of them expected. Hope. That night, Walter sat alone again at the clubhouse. He didn't drink. He just looked at the wall of old photos and realized something. This wasn't about saving a life. It was about proving that leaving didn't mean you were forgotten. The call came early, too early. Walter's phone buzzed on the nightstand. One look at the screen and his heart dropped. Hospital. He didn't wake anyone, just got dressed and rode. By the time the others arrived, Lily was already there, sitting stiff in the chair beside her father's bed. Thomas looked weaker than he had in weeks. The doctor spoke quietly, carefully. Complications, another surgery, no guarantees. Lily didn't cry. She stood, walked to the bed, and took her father's hand. "I'm here," she said. "You don't have to be scared." Thomas smiled faintly. "I was never scared," he whispered. "Not with you." The room felt too small for what was happening. Walter stepped forward. "You did everything right," he told Thomas. "You hear me? Everything." Thomas looked at the men, his brothers, standing where he never expected to see them again. I thought leaving meant losing you, he said. I was wrong. Walter leaned closer. Leaving meant trusting us, he said. That's not losing. Hours passed, machines hummed, time slowed. Then finally the doctor returned. The surgery had worked, not the end, but a turning point. Lily's knees buckled. Mason caught her before she hit the floor. For the first time since walking into the clubhouse, Lily cried like a child, not from fear, from relief. Weeks later, Thomas sat outside his house in the sun, Lily beside him. Walter watched from the driveway. Thomas looked smaller, older, but alive. You know, Thomas said softly, I never thought the tattoo would matter again. Walter smiled. It's not the ink, he said. It's what it stands for. Lily looked up at them. So it means family. Walter nodded. Exactly. And in that moment, in the way she spoke, the way she listened, she carried herself like someone who had seen the edge of things and survived. At school, she wrote an essay about family, not the kind teachers expect. She wrote about men with rough hands and quiet voices, about how family sometimes shows up wearing leather jackets and tired eyes, about how love doesn't always look gentle, sometimes it looks like sacrifice. Her teacher called Thomas in after class. She's different, she said, in a good way. Thomas nodded. He knew why. One afternoon, Lily asked to visit the clubhouse again, not because she needed help, because she wanted to say thank you. The men didn't know what to do when she walked in smiling this time. She handed them a small photo, her and her dad standing in the sunlight. For reminding him who he is, she said. Walter kept it behind the bar. That night, Thomas sat outside with Lily, watching the sky fade into orange. I was scared you'd resent me, he said quietly. For leaving, for getting sick. Lily leaned against him. You taught me how to be brave, she said. Even when you didn't feel brave yourself. Thomas closed his eyes. Some lessons are never spoken, they're lived, and passed on without realizing it. The sound came before the sight. Engines, not loud, not wild, familiar. Lily ran to the window. They're here, she said. Thomas stepped onto the porch slowly. Walter stood at the front, helmet under his arm. We're doing a short ride, he said. Thought you might want to watch. Thomas smiled. I think I'm done chasing the road, he said, but I'm glad it still knows where to find me. Lily waved as they rode off, bikes disappearing into the distance like a memory finally at peace. Later that evening, Thomas surprised her. He pulled out an old box. Inside were photos, tools, a folded jacket, and the tattoo stencil. I kept this, he said, to remember who I was. Lily looked up. And who are you now? Thomas thought. I'm your dad, he said, and that's enough. They sat together in silence. The kind that doesn't ache, the kind that heals. Years passed. Cancer didn't disappear forever. It never does, but it stayed quiet. Lily graduated. Thomas stood in the crowd, tears on his face, alive, something he once wasn't sure he'd get to be. Walter grew older. Slower, wiser. The clubhouse walls gained new photos. Not all the old faces were there anymore, but the meaning stayed. One day, Lily asked Walter something. Why did you help us? She said. Walter smiled gently. Because your dad reminded us who we wanted to be. She nodded. That answer felt complete. On Lily's 18th birthday, Thomas gave her a small box. Inside was a necklace. Engraved on the back were simple words. Loyalty remembers. She hugged him tight. I know what it means now, she said. Thomas smiled. So did Walter, watching from the doorway. Some tattoos fade, some stories don't. They live in the choices we make when no one is watching. And sometimes they walk back into our lives on shaking legs with a soft voice and a truth strong enough to stop time. If this story moved you, don't forget to asterisk like asterisk a story.